David Wernsman, thank you so much for taking the time to come on to Talk Beliefs. My last interviewee actually was from Arizona, which is where you are now, of course. But you're originally from Colorado, is that right?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Greeley, Colorado, but the year I actually got back from Escuela Caribe, I graduated high school in Colorado, and I moved out to Phoenix, Arizona to go to ASU, and graduated from ASU, and now I have a nice job out here, and I'm still here.
Now, David, people may know you from the 2014 documentary Kidnapped for Christ, of course, which was a project by film student at the time,
Yes.
Kate Logan. I did a little review of it last week, but for anyone who doesn't know, it centers around you and some other young people who had been forcibly sent by their parents to a Christian, let me get this right, behavioral modification camp, which sounds awful.
Exactly.
So let's just get the ball rolling by hearing your story. And right from the beginning, what happened?
I came out when I was 16. My parents found out, and they did not have they didn't have the best reaction. They're very conservative Christian. They sent me to therapies, and they didn't. I wasn't about to go to therapy for being gay. It's not something that I can help. And as a last resort, when I was 17, they sent me to Escuela Caribe. I was woken up at 5:30 in the morning. Two guys were there, and they put this belt around my waist, and they said, if you try to run from us, we're going to handcuff you and drive you to where we're going, which is ironic because Escuela Caribe was, over the Caribbean. And they forcibly took me out of my home, and my parents already had a bag packed, and suddenly, this trash bag of clothes was, tossed into the back of the car with some other luggage they'd packed for me, and they wouldn't tell me where we were going. And excuse me, we were on our way to the airport, and we flew to Miami, and then we ended up in Santiago, Dominican Republic, in the middle of the night. At this point, drove me up to this little mountain town on the island, and the town's called Jarabacoa, and which kind of on the outskirts of it is the grounds of Escuela Caribe. And then it all happened. Essentially, I was stuck in this program and unable to leave. And they gave me a phone call upon arrival to my dad. The house father at the time, Brian, said, "You have 2 minutes to talk to your dad." And I really didn't know what to say. Brian told me to tell him that I'm here, and I basically said, "I'm here." And I had no idea that I wouldn't be able to talk to him for 3 months. Kate came to the campus to do her film about 3 or 4 months into when I was there. And then that's when you saw me, 17-year-old, on the documentary for Kidnapped for Christ. Kate was from Biola University, and when she got there, she introduced herself. She was there to film the stories of the students and their transformation through God, essentially. Her understanding of the school that we were all there due to having gotten in serious trouble, and or that it was a bunch of juvenile delinquents there to get a second chance. I think all the students had a slight sense they might be able to get their chance to shed some light on the abusive reality of the program. for me, I hoped and prayed she'd interview me. Just the fact that she was from Biola, because Angie, who actually was in the film, was going to be an incoming freshman there. And she was one of my best friends. And it was one of those, this is too much of a coincidence to, she asked me for an interview, and I took a leap of faith and told my story. I told her about Angie, and all the Escuela Caribe staff had left the room during my interview, which was extremely rare. A lot of other kids had interviews that, with the staff at least within earshot. I don't know how it happened that I was able to get a private interview, and I honestly felt that I could, confide in her with the, truth of my story. And yeah, and she also took, I don't know if I said, she took interest in me because I was a newer student, and I might have a perspective and honesty that's less brainwashed than other of the students. Because I mean, those that were there for a year or two, their answers were mostly like, yeah, I guess things are okay. It's not that bad. This happens, but it's not really bad. Even after 7 months of me being there, I was just kind of numb to everything, and
yeah, you're dead into it.
It was what it was. And she also told me from her observations I didn't fit into the mold of all the troubled teens among other students. Not to say that any of those students were there, that were there for drugs and violence, deserved to be there more than I. But during the interview, I guess it didn't occur to her that kids were sent to Escuela Caribe, for being gay as well. And Escuela Caribe was essentially this one-stop shop Christian treatment program that really believed they could fix anything through their perception of God. Very dark and twisted. And I mean, they claimed to treat kids for clinical anxiety, their sexual orientation, drug abuse. The one kid was there for playing too many computer games and listening to rap music, and it's kind of something like that.
Yeah, so you must have felt a bit like, why am I here? Because they're equating my sexuality with people who've, I don't know, perhaps had a problem with stealing things or drugs or that kind of thing.
Yeah, but sure. I mean, the way that they treated kids that were gay, they pretty much told them that they weren't there for being gay, that they were there for trust issues. Their mentality on it is that it doesn't exist. Gay people don't exist. You're not gay, you just don't trust women. Or something happened to you, you were abused. And so I kind of, because they said I wasn't there because I was gay, I had that constant questioning, like, why am I really here? I've never been in trouble with the law. I fought with my parents, and I know exactly why I'm here, and it's because, they weren't able to come around on the fact that, I was homosexual. And
so to be clear, you weren't like a law-breaking or violent kid. I know you got angry because of your parents didn't accept you as who you were, but it was just because they found out, or did you tell them?
They found out, essentially, and that kind of led to a cascade of me being open to, my friends, and essentially I didn't care at school that people knew, and honestly, I had a great high school experience. There were those that, thought, the students who didn't really accept it, it didn't really matter to me. And, my friends' parents knew exactly the kind of issues I was having at home. And I honestly received so much love and support, and that really got me through everything. Just in the coming out phase. I mean, compared to other students these days who still get, bullied at school, I had a really unique high school experience. And, I would go home, and going home to parents that, don't accept you. And that honestly became their entire perception of me, was that I have this huge problem, regardless of the fact that I was in, all AP and IB classes. I don't know if you know what IB is. I think it's, I believe it's an international program. It's called the International Baccalaureate Program. You basically do all AP courses when you're a junior in high school, and then IB courses when you're a senior. And it makes you, it equips you with the ability to essentially be an incoming sophomore into a bachelor's program. So I definitely found school very important. I was good at that. And
weren't you in a drama scholarship or something you were applying for, something like that?
Yeah, I really wanted to go to school for theater, musical theater. Our theater director really took me under her wing for support, and that's honestly what I loved. And actually, later on in college, I tried to pursue a little bit of that, but then I decided to focus on science things. And I'm actually back in school this year, 10 years later, trying to pursue medical school. So,
wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah, a little bit different than theater, but that was my dream back then. And I had goals. I had great grades, and didn't really fit the mold, I guess.
And unfortunately, you didn't really get to see those dreams, because the moment that you were sent down to the Dominican Republic, you were there a lot longer than you thought. You were there past 18, which is a big thing in the documentary, is that you were there against your will.
Essentially, if you take kids who are about to turn 18, this is a sketchy part, to a secluded, remote destination and isolate them and take away their passports, they really can't leave. That in the community of Barbacoa is very, definitely low income, and the New Horizons, invested a lot of money in there. And it was also a well-known thing around that little town that if any of the kids from Escuela Caribe escaped, we all dressed a certain way so that they would know whether or not we were a student there. That we pretty much had a 2,500 or 25,000 peso cash prize on our head the moment we tried to escape. And there were kids that were brought back to campus hogtied in the back of a pickup truck with a rifle to their head. I'm not kidding.
Wow. So that was something that didn't come out in the documentary, although the doc is horrifying enough.
I've been, contacted by a lot of the students I was there with, unfortunately, that were upset that the documentary didn't even touch on half of the horrors that they went through. And honestly, I didn't go through what they went through, and there's a lot of traumatic things that one documentary can't even touch base on.
And I suppose Kate was sort of like ushered away from certain things. She wasn't allowed to film everything, was she?
Oh yeah, when they realized that they couldn't really, control her, and that she was just going in and filming, and doing her best. She was moved off campus so that you couldn't see the things that happened at night. I mean, she was invited there during the school days when things were more calm, but in the evenings during all of the house stuff and what they call home life, the military style, cleaning and push-ups over ridiculousness occurred. She missed out on a lot of that. And when she would come to a house for interviews, staff became very mild in their interactions with us and things like that. I mean, there were some staff that were completely brainwashed and believe in the program who, said it bluntly how it was, like Mike Cohen, who is known for that soundbite of these are for birds, I swear. I believe is what he said. He definitely had no problem mistreating
Wow.
the students.
So, David, Kate, of course, Kate Logan was the documentary's director, and she was really instrumental to getting you out of there. So was there something about Kate that made you feel that you could trust her to help you, that even though she came from an evangelical background, you could somehow sense that she was uncomfortable what was going on in the school?
She told me, it didn't occur to her that kids actually got there for being gay. And Peter, who was also there with Kate to help film, they kind of really, they said that it shook up their beliefs on, gay people in general. And, saw me as a, just a good person, and that it's honestly not fair. And it's the same situation for just about every student there. Like, that's not really fair to be sent there. Or, none of us really deserve to be there. And I guess we clicked personality wise, and I, regardless of what conservative beliefs she might have had, and wanted me to have, I guess I was just completely honest. And after the interview, and they pretty much told me that I couldn't tell anybody that I was gay there. And during that interview, I said it, and it was exhilarating. And honestly, after that interview, I didn't get in trouble or asked about the interview or anything. I got the letter out to the school. I think I'm, one in a million to be able to sneak out a letter from a place like that.
Which you can actually see caught on film, can't you? Handing it to Kate.
Probably one of the most frightening moments of my life. I can still remember how fast my heart was beating. Months after Kate had left, I got into my head a lot, and I developed a lot of anxiety, thinking that, Kate herself was a setup by the school to essentially get me in trouble later on down the road, because that's kind of how the program worked. They try to trick you and stuff like that so that they have a reason to punish you. And
snitch on you, which we also see in the.
Oh yeah. And, I was just like this, I was in isolation for 5 months after Kate left. So, I had thoughts like maybe Kate was hired by the school, or like it's all going to come crashing down on me. And eventually, I just felt helpless, especially, when on the day that I turned 18, it was just nothing. I was like, I really am, stuck here. Unbeknownst to me, that Mark and Doug, my friend's parents, who I still keep in contact with today, went on campus, but the staff strategically, diverted them from being able to reach me. Yeah, I mean, after everything that happened and the way that the school treated Kate after the interview for trying to follow up and even help me get out, her faith changed completely as well. I think the opposite of coming to faith, for both of us. I felt like I was a religious person. I had a religious foundation before I had this experience. When I came out, my parents felt that I was turning away from God. I felt in some way that, this wasn't a thing to turn away from God. Like, I still, have those values and beliefs. It's just, reformed, and I have a higher understanding of myself, and it doesn't interfere with with God, and sadly, I don't have a positive outlook on Christianity as a whole anymore after this. Neither does Kate. I mean, I'm a very spiritual person, but it did the opposite of what my parents had hoped.
David, when you got to the school down in Escuela Caribe, you must have thought a lot about your relationship with your parents, which was already rocky. So how has your relationship changed with your family since the experience of Escuela Caribe? And have you come to an understanding with your parents since?
After the program, you know, I moved back in with my parents. My parents, you know, let me graduate high school, that last semester of high school, and then I moved here to Arizona. They supported me. You know, I kept a lot of, you know, any sort of follow-up interviews for the documentary outside of that, and my parents paid for undergrad, and things were okay. They seemed to be more accepting. You know, I was able to bring my first boyfriend home to visit one time, and my extended family is extremely embracing. You know, definitely embraced everything that happened. But even after telling them exactly what happened, when the documentary came out, you know, my extended family really reached out to me and said, you know, why didn't you tell us? And that made my parents upset. And through various stages, I think, of dealing with the being sent to Escuela Caribe factor on top of being gay, has put a lot of different periods of strain on my relationship with them. At the end of the day, they want a relationship with me. They love me in their own way, and they're trying. They're from a different generation and place, and from where they were to where they are now, it's honestly different. And you know, people blame you know, them, be like, oh, what terrible parents for sending their kids away. They at the time were, you know, were doing what they knew, all they knew how to do. They were helpless. They didn't know, and they really believed that, you know, I was going to go to hell, and they had to save my soul. And you know, you type in a few words on the internet to find different things, and you end up calling one of these numbers. I saw the website that lures parents into places like this, and the music even captivates you. And so you can imagine yourself as an emotionally distressed parent, and it just draws you in, and it has all these, like, you know, catchwords on there, like, hurry now, like, you need this is the best thing. And you get sucked into the cult. They provide that, you know, relief, you know, to the emotionally distressed parent who doesn't know what to do. And you know, that what they tell your parents, they're like, yes, this program is hard, and they're going to do exercises, they're going to do punishment, but they have this opportunity to experience and get it, you know, step away from all of the problems that are happening at home and really focus on God and this beautiful tropical island destination. Sounds like a vacation. They really honestly thought that.
So they didn't really know, and parents don't know exactly what they're getting their kids into.
Yeah, because they're, you know, the staff and people who run these places get the trust of parents. You know, and they know exactly how to manipulate the you know, different aspects of the program to make it sound legitimate, and then also throw the this is what God wants sort of thing in there. And it's really, they are good at what they do.
So how did your parents react when you told them what actually went on for those years that you were down there?
You know, some of the first discussions, I remember my mom saying, well, I know that you received swats, but did you learn any Spanish? And my reply was a few times, and
So that's with a paddle, not with the fly swatter, isn't that right?
with a paddle, with essentially a whip that I actually have later found at an S&M store. Interestingly, but I found that ironic. I said, Mom, I was swatted different times sometimes for things that I didn't even do. It doesn't sound as bad because when a kid there gets in trouble, you get to choose your punishment. It's either you get units, you could choose 6 swats, get it over, or 6 hours of hard labor. But either one of them is destructive. I mean, getting swatted as a 17-year-old was a little bit humiliating. And 6 hours of hard labor is terrible on your, psyche. They made us do things like push these rocks up this hill that we lived on, and the person, running the work hours would roll them back down, or they made you, dig a hole with a pickaxe until you just can't.
I honestly got the feeling when I was watching that some of the house parents, I think you call them, were sort of like, it was like a power trip for them. It's like,
oh yeah, it is a haven for sociopaths. People who love that, dominating control to manipulate kids. And I mean, there's other staff there that honestly thought they were going to do a mission trip or something to help troubled kids at this program in the Dominican Republic that, kind of raised an eyebrow, things. There were some that were easily influenced, by people who have expert, this program's developed this and that by a doctor, Dr. Redwine. They don't look at the details of it. And that for our particular program, New Horizons, Dr. Redwine is not a doctor. He has a PhD in divinity. And the last time I checked, divinity is a course that they took at Hogwarts in Harry Potter. Like, you're not a doctor. You cannot create something, a Christian program that you have no, it's on a horrible basis. Like, you tell people, oh, this was developed by a doctor. They believe it. They believe everything they hear. They don't look at the details.
They don't fact check it, in other words.
Yeah, those, people who went down there as volunteer staff, a lot of times left after a few months because they are uncomfortable. The ones that stay are the ones that are easily influenced in the program.
Wow, and there are hundreds of these places around, well, the United States especially.
Yeah, even within the United States, they run even. It's an underground industry. It's a lot of money goes into these places, and most of the time you don't even know they exist. And there's other programs that are not even religious, like oh Lord, I can't even think of them now, that can operate in the house next door to you and you wouldn't even know it. Or one kid, his program moved around so much at one point, he ended up in somebody's basement for a year in these, sort of cult behavioral modification things. And you don't get a choice to leave. They made it sound like, for my program, that you have this 5-level program. Once you get to the 5th level, you can leave. Like, oh, it's a sort of achievement thing. So I read the rules. I knew exactly what I was doing. I got to level 2 within 2 weeks. The only other person who's been able to do that that I'm aware of was Julia Shears.
Who wrote the book?
Julia Shears wrote Jesus Land.
Yeah.
That's another reason. So Kate had said she actually read at Jesus Land before she went to Escuela Caribe. She was curious. And I was a level 2, and I had been there for 2 months. And so that was like, oh, we have this modern day Julia Shears. I don't know. you get to level 2, but then suddenly you read the manual. I mean, I'm great at reading what I need to do and following the directions to a T. They saw that I was excelling, but then decided that, they need to slow down my progress. And they said, well, David, you can't go to the next level because all you are is a performer. Meaning that all it is an act. And then when I start acting truthful, and when I take off some sort of performance mask, then I might get to the next level, which has actually kind of stuck with me today. In the, am I just a performer? Like, what I honestly have had a struggle to really figure that out, because they kept me on level 2 for several months until I finally reached level 3 when I was about to leave. And again, in letters, the weekly controlled and monitored letters that we had with our parents, and one of them discussed, well, you can come home once you reach level 5, because that's our understanding of what this program is. And most of the kids there get stuck on levels 0 and 1. Spend most of the program at 0 or 1. And it's completely impossible. They can manipulate your point sheet that they use to calculate how you achieve the next level any way that they want. They can whether or not you think you had a good day, or they can make you believe you had a terrible day. And it's impossible.
Do kids who are sent to these camps often end up needing some kind of counseling or similar help after they leave?
I think a lot of us, this sort of programs is unfortunately called therapy. We sat once a week with our counselors there, but it wasn't counseling. It was not even close. I think a lot of us have a very warped and ill feelings toward therapy and counseling afterwards. I have not. I've stayed away because there's something in the back of all of our minds in counseling that we feel we're being manipulated, that a therapist has ill intentions.
Wow.
When the therapist becomes the abuser, it gets really muddy. The best therapy for me was being able to tell my story, and sometimes if I didn't have the film, I may or may not have believed that a lot of things that happened actually happened. It was 8 years before the film finally came up after it all happened, and I was starting to believe that maybe it really wasn't as crazy as it was. And a lot of kids that go to places like this over time really kind of have this overwhelming feeling that maybe I did deserve that, or it wasn't really that bad. And watching the film, even for me and many other survivors of these sorts of institutions, are reawakened and kind of have that, oh shit, like something did happen. And I really want it to be a tool for others who've been through similar things to be able to, tell their loved ones or spouse that, this is what I went through. Because it has so many layers to it that starting from the beginning almost sounds like a made-up story.
Wow. And unfortunately, there are camps like this all over the USA, as we said, and they're all
Oh,
unregulated, so all
oh,
operating under their own rules. So, I mean, is there anything that can
majority
be
of them
done? You know?
use the word religious or spiritual Christian, and um, it does not, it exempts them from different standards. And one of the biggest things that we want through the Protect Youth Against Institutional Youth campaign is to get regulation without religious exempts. You don't want to brainwash kids into believing, that Jesus rode the dinosaurs sort of thing. Like, it's ruining our society, and it needs to be controlled. And we have to have national regulation for it, among other things that are happening in the country. Once again, we got the bill passed last year in the state of California, but again, I was a student from Colorado who ended up in a program based out of Indiana in the Dominican Republic, and seeing how these places, tactically, move kids from one place to another. New Horizons even had a place in Canada. To get legislation that's going to affect all branches of these sort of organizations is really important, because, I felt like New Horizons, tactically placed me in their wormhole, part of the program that, led me to being stuck in the Dominican Republic without a passport.
Wow.
So.
And yeah, they do sort of get a free pass if they under the banner of religious. People assume that something good, something moral, something constructive is going to go on there. And at the end of the doc, we hear that since the 1970s, at least, I think it's 157 American teenagers have died in these behavioral modification programs. So why don't we hear more about these? I mean, why is it swept under the carpet?
Well, a lot of it's even post-program and depression. Again, I fight the, mentality of, maybe I did deserve that, and I'm in general just a bad person. A lot of us who are members of, SIA, or survivors of institutional abuse, have that thought programmed into us that we are bad people, we did something wrong, and we're fighting sometimes almost daily to silence that voice that is not our own, that was programmed into us because of these places. And two of the students that I was at Escuela Caribe, no, three of the students that I was at Escuela Caribe, they would have passed away. And a lot of it's, if not in the programs, from accidents or suffocation, being strangled by staff. It's some kids get into drugs afterwards and overdose just to cope with their feelings. Two kids have committed suicide afterward. So you count up all of those, it's a hell of a lot more than.
Well, they think they're gonna, as they say, fix you and make things better, and they're making things worse.
It makes things worse for people
In a lot of cases. Well, so yeah, David, your life has changed in more ways than one since the documentary was made. You've become quite the activist, involved in several programs that help kids caught up in these abusive institutions. And we see you, as you just mentioned in the film, we see you attending the SIA, Survivors of Institutional Abuse. We see you go to one of those conferences. Yeah. So can you talk about what you're involved in and how it's all going?
Yes. So I mentioned before, I got involved with SIA, or Survivors of Institutional Abuse, which my first conference was filmed during the documentary, and my eyes opened to how large the troubled teen industry, how big of a problem it is. It's really frightening how many different institutions there are, and I really recommend anybody who's been through that sort of thing get involved with SIA. Their website is sia-now.org. And, you know, tell your story. If you're looking for an outlet for that, tell a story. You know, you may even find different survivors of the same program you went to. And it's not just for Escuela Caribe or New Horizons. There's so many more. I'm also involved with the Los Angeles LGBT Center, who with SIA has basically headed the Protect Youth Against Institutional Abuse campaign for that legislation. They have been absolutely wonderful, an incredible resource for the LGBT community. Getting to meet the producers for the film, Tom DeSanto and Lance Bass, getting to hang out with.
Yeah, that was cool.
You know, one of my most favorite childhood music artists. That was really incredible. You know, for them to step up, and we're getting our voices heard.
That's excellent, and no small part through what you're doing. So I want to really thank you for that. And the documentary and you speaking out, I know is helping a lot of people. And I mean, hopefully we can get these places closed down. I mean, regulated is one thing, but I think they should be just pretty much stopped, don't you?
I do too, and I appreciate you taking the time to interview me about the film and you know, get the word out about everything.
Yes, well, thank you so much. Thank you for being so open and honest. We learned some things that didn't come out in the documentary. Thank you for your activism work as well. So I'll put all those links in the description, and I know you'll be sending me a few more.
Yeah. Oh, and so Kate Logan, the director of the film, has recently released the film
Active Love?
Active Love.
Yeah.
Check that out. And she's also working on another film after that. After Kidnap for Christ, Kate Logan is really out there trying to, you know, talk about some tough things, topics of religion and human rights. So keep an eye out for her.
Oh, we definitely will be. So I just want to say thanks once again, David, and hopefully we'll catch up with you again in the near future.
Yeah, thank you.